Welcome everyone to another night of hometown history. I am Jamie.
I'm Dami.
And tonight we are at the Burning Bridge Tavern in Wrightsville. Tonight our story is on Tropical Storm Agnes at 50. When it rained, it poured. Yes. So you'll notice my last name changed. I got married this past weekend, so I am now... Guys. So you'll see me as Jamie Norpel. No, Dami did not break up with me for another Jamie. It's still me.
It's not her evil twin.
But I have a degree in history and in American studies, and I'm a full-time history teacher.
And I did not get married this past weekend. And I am a librarian for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and I'm a Civil War reenactor.
Yeah, and you've been out there in the heat recently.
I have, yeah. It doesn't get any cooler, wearing that wool. Yeah.
So tonight is extra special because in addition to talking about Agnes at the Burning Bridge, it is our 1 year anniversary since starting hometown history. So the claps. This is nice.
I know people still are putting up with us and watching our videos.
Yeah. We should go back and do a commentary of our 1 year ago video to see.
Might be a little rough.
A
lot of things have changed.
So this is in partnership tonight with the York County Economic Alliance, and again, we are at the Burning Bridge Tavern down in Wrightsville. Please come down and support your local business owners. All the food tonight has been delicious.
Yeah.
I split a dinner with Luke. It was so much food, and I know Sandra, who's going to be here later, had so much food with her husband that they're going to take a meal home tonight. So
that's great.
Good food and karaoke, I hear, later potentially.
That's after the episode.
So tonight's forecast, we're going to start with the weather predictions leading up to Agnes. Then we're going to go through the town, starting with Hanover, Spring Grove, Glenrock, York, Wrightsville, and the river, what happened here, and then finish with the aftermath.
Right, and we always try to have some takeaways with these episodes. So number one would be the devastation that Agnes caused. I mean, it was across the whole state. And then number two, we have to learn how to be better prepared for natural disasters. And then three, the community came together and they rebuilt, and hopefully Sandra later will have 4 or 5 takeaways for us.
Yeah. So starting with weather predictions. So
again, it comes back to one of our takeaways with the preparedness. People weren't prepared for this storm, not at all. So the weather forecast leading up to June 23rd gave little warning that Agnes was going to hit Pennsylvania. It was the second tropical cyclone of the season, and it was the first named storm of the season. And that was in 1972. So after making landfall, it weakened, and then on the 21st, it became a tropical storm. So it strengthened as it came across the country. And after making landfall in Florida as a Category 1 storm on the 19th in 1972, Agnes methodically moved north. It curved into the Atlantic before hitting land again in New York, and then later in the month, merging with another storm system over Pennsylvania to cause widespread catastrophic flooding. So, I mean, this really caught everyone unaware. So the YDR tells the weather forecast for the days leading up to Agnes hitting York County. So on Monday the 19th, it said cloudy, chance of rain, high in the mid-70s. So, you're not really going to think that tropical storm's about to hit you.
Yep.
Tuesday the 20th, rain developing, high in the 70s. Wednesday, June 21st, rain, high in the 70s, 5 p.m., the rain starts in earnest. And this is when Agnes really makes herself known.
Wednesday going into Thursday night. So then Thursday, this is what, when it hit June 22nd, and you can see the York Daily Record then had a picture on the front of what it was like when the weather hit. And it was serious. It was a big deal. If you look at the total rainfall that we had, it was over 16 inches. And we highlighted specifically that 24-hour period from Wednesday at 5 p.m. to Thursday at 5 p.m. They got dumped on 13 and a half inches within 24 hours. And it's not like it's just the river grew by that much. It's sheets going down fields, in backyards, on sidewalks, going down roads. So that's a lot of water all at once, and it would be different too if we were prepared. Sandra's going to talk later about what it was like to be kind of thrown off and not expecting it, and because there wasn't really any leading up to get people be prepared.
Right, people weren't thinking that they had to clean out their storm drains or put sandbags out to stop the rain from coming onto their property.
So Sandra says specifically on Thursday, June 22nd, that Wednesday morning of June 14th, 1970, I woke up to clouds and rain. It was raining so hard for days on edge. Local television news kept talking about all the rain we were getting in York, Pennsylvania, but the local television stations did not report any news about a hurricane or an impending flood.
Yeah, so completely unaware.
Yeah. When Luke and I were getting ready for the wedding, I told him it's going to rain. It's just prepare for the rain.
I kept checking the weather forecast. I was nervous for you.
Well, and it's like leading up, like the Monday it was like 40%, like Tuesday it was like 30%, but then Wednesday it was like 45, 50%. I'm like, darn it, what is this rain gonna do? And it ended up being beautiful. It was just sunshine the entire time, a little hot, a little bit of breeze.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, you check the weather as diligently as possible, but is it accurate,
Well, and it's such an perfect science. When you think about the changing wind, the precipitation that's in the air, I mean, there's so many different factors that go into it. Side note, I don't know if you ever knew this about me, but if I wasn't going to be a social studies teacher, I was going to be a meteorologist.
I didn't know that. I took meteorology in college.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, 1 semester.
Why?
Because it was my science. And I wasn't good at biology.
I took Earth and Space, and my professor was so bad, and the final exam was so tough. He said, 24, I might be able to see an answer. No. I know. I was like, oh, this is not.
I just wanted to be a librarian. I didn't want to be a scientist, so I took meteorology. It was a retired meteorologist from like a local news station. Oh, yeah. And this was his retirement gig. He taught it at Hack.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it was really fun.
So what the news knew then on Thursday evening, this is what YDR would have printed. And again, the forecast, they're talking about rain, high in the 70s. But again, we're just seeing rain. We're not saying be prepared, there's a storm coming. Like, we don't have that type of awareness.
Right, and then we have a quote here from Joe Calhoun, who everyone I'm sure is aware of. Agnes was just a slow-moving area of low pressure when it reached the Susquehanna Valley, but with plenty of tropical moisture and a slow movement, it caused record rainfall. And then, we have other quotes from staff writers of the Patriot News. Cal Turner says, Agnes had us fooled, and he's not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it really did. And then we have another quote from the same article. Her name was Agnes, and she wore anything but paint and powder. Instead of a smile, she carried a specter wrought by wind and rain. Her touch was a disaster. And it's true because, I think people were just expecting a summer rainfall, and instead they got the worst flooding that central Pennsylvania had ever seen.
Had ever seen,
yeah, and we haven't seen anything like it since.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Agnes at 50 is really a big deal. So that's why so many people are talking about it. So coming up out of the Gulf a couple of weeks ago, she got a big play in the newspapers and on the airwaves, but to central Pennsylvania, she was somebody else's worry. She was going other places, and 2, don't hurricanes hang along the coast? So that's another quote from the article talking about hindsight's 2020. If we would have watched a little bit closer, if we would have followed her path, we could have seen her coming. But
well, people in York County don't think about earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes. We really don't have to usually.
Right.
Yeah. So getting into our first town tonight, Hanover. So down in Hanover, they got 10 inches of rain and within a matter of hours, and hundreds of homes took the water, and it really made any type of pumping futile.
Right.
Like I know in our house in Newburytown, we have a sump pump, and when it rains, it's like seeping out of the walls. I mean, like picture water coming out of stone concrete walls. And so if we didn't have that sump pump, or if we lost electricity, then I mean our basement would be flooded.
Yeah, and this rain was too much. They couldn't keep up.
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah. Actually, my house was built in 31. I wonder what it was like.
I don't know.
Yeah. So here's what the Evening Sun would have published. This is what the newspaper looked like. Again, showing the damage through a lot of storytelling, but then also the pictures there. And this bridge we wanted to highlight. So this is a bridge down in the Hanover area. This was created in the 1860s, and it was first affected during the Civil War, but then they ended up rebuilding it. And then they made a 2-arch system later on, and then Agnes came through and just wiped it out. So Agnes not only affected people, but it affected historians like you and me that like to go back and look at history. And things that are 150 years old were demolished. Yeah. So moving up through Spring Grove, Codorus Creek measured 96 inches at the depth of Mill Dam, and the previous record was from 1933 at only 54 inches. So it almost doubled the previous record.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And there's a picture there of Mangus Mills Market up from Spring Grove, and water went the whole way up to the gas station pumps. Here would have been the Gladfelder paper mill. Again, water the whole way up to the top. And then this didn't just affect businesses or homes, but like farmers and their fields. I mean, this is someone's livelihood. This is their crop, this is their stock, their corn, and now their entire field is just, I mean, gone. Just gone.
It's sad.
Yep.
So then we have Sandra Stockton with us tonight, and we have her book here. So if you would like to buy her book, the live audience can buy them tonight, or you can go online and buy them if you're just watching from home. But she lived through this storm, and she's going to be with us later for our extra episode, and she's going to talk more about it and hopefully give us some more takeaways and some insight into her life during the storm and cleaning up and rebuilding.
An entire chapter dedicated to Agnes in her book and her memoir.
Yes.
And she's part 2 and part 3 on the way, coming soon.
Yeah, she's not slowing down.
Yeah, I know.
So that takes us to Glenrock. So Glenrock is not a stranger to flooding, unfortunately. I mean, you can see 01, 02, 04, 05, 11, 1915, 1933. I mean, I feel like if any town should have been prepared for this, it might have been poor Glenrock.
Kudos to the people that live there and still live there, because you guys get flooded.
They're troopers. So on Thursday, June 22nd, 1972, early flooding of the Doris Creek caused by heavy rains from Hurricane Agnes tipped off the fire sirens at 4 a.m. So you're at home, the rain's falling, it's not letting up, and all of a sudden the fire sirens are going off. So, I mean, I can only imagine that people were probably pretty scared. It's 4 a.m.
Would you leave? Like, I'm thinking about my house with everything I love. I have a cat. I mean, I'd be scared, but I mean, think about like even Louisiana, Katrina.
Right.
You know, like it's so easy to say, why didn't they get out of there? But I mean, what would you do? It's just rain. It's just water. That couldn't hurt, right?
I mean, I think if I lived in a place like Louisiana where they can track those storms more easily and they knew the hurricane was coming, I might evacuate if I had time. For this, no. I mean, I'd just be in my house being like, why are the fire sirens going off? But so that was at 4 a.m. and then it's 6 a.m. and the water had risen to 10 feet at some places. So, I mean, can you imagine just Baltimore, Maine, Manchester, and Hanover streets in Glenrock just flooded?
I mean, this thing is going to be higher than cars.
Yes.
It's going to be higher than street signs. I mean, imagine looking out your second-story window and seeing a stop sign, just like the top of it, and that's it.
And it's not just water. It brings mud. There's things just floating down the street. Anything, you know, water is so powerful, so it's picking things up.
As it's going.
Yeah, yeah.
So moving then down into York. So in York, again, their previous floods, we've had them in the 1880s, 1930s, 1936. But again, this was 16.02 inches of rain that fell in the area of York from Agnes. And so the human impact was great. Again, one of our takeaways tonight is that we want to make history fun and accessible to everyone, but we also understand the gravity of a lot of the topics that we discuss. And Hurricane Agnes was no exception. There was lots of devastation. And so there were 36 Girl Scouts who had to be rescued by the state police who were camping in the area. And then there was an unidentified elderly man who was reported missing. He was swept away from Poorhouse Run flood. From the control project at Prospect Street, and we think at least 4 people died from this as well, from the rushing waters.
Yeah, at least 4 people.
Yep. And property damage then too. $30 million worth of property damage.
It's wild.
Yeah, and the worst part was it was in lower income housing, and so it's by people who cannot afford to just go out and fix up their house or pay contractors. I mean, these are people who might be living paycheck to paycheck, and now their home is gone as well.
Okay, and that brings us into Wrightsville. So the minor flood stage at Marietta, which I have to make a note, we don't check the flood stages here in Wrightsville. All of that is measured across the river in Marietta.
I wonder why that is.
I was talking to Jim actually, and he said something about the National Weather Service just has designated areas, and Harrisburg is one of them, so I think that's our West Shore point.
Okay.
And then, so on the East Shore, it would be Marietta.
Okay.
So that's our counterpart for that. So at 17 feet, if you're going to reach flood stage, it's 17 feet in Harrisburg, but 49 feet here in the Wrightsville, Marietta area. So picture that difference for a second. 17 feet in Harrisburg, 49 feet.
Well, and that's how much flood water could be handled.
Right.
So Harrisburg can handle 17 feet, and Marietta can handle 49 feet,
but Harrisburg reached 33.27 feet. So that is crazy. And it's the only time the river crested above 30 feet. And in Marietta, the record high of 64.54 was set in 1972 by Agnes. So I mean, these are blowing these numbers out of the water.
Doubling them.
I know. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, that is just catastrophic. And there was people just floating down Main Street in Wrightsville in their boats, you know, and I say that jokingly, but I'm serious. We have pictures of people in their boats on the main streets. And again, water wasn't the only problem. There was tons of mud, and these people who live close to the river, they vividly remember that when they went into their houses afterward, you know, you're thinking of water damage, but once the water recedes, you're just left with mud.
And like, think about your drywall, that's gonna disintegrate.
It's crazy. It's completely, it's not just cosmetic.
Right. Structural too. And this picture is from Wrightsville, and we're in Wrightsville tonight. And so you can see Jim McClure, who is our third hometown history teammate.
Yes.
He's more of the behind the scenes research computer guy, but he pointed out to us that you can see John Wright Factory Outlet, the restaurant there. It's about in the center, and how the water was the whole way up to the factory. So again, like, it proceeded way inland than what they were expecting. And just like Dami pointed out, people were floating around their boats.
I'm sure it was just a wild sight to see.
Wow.
There's no roads anymore, it's just waterways.
Yeah. We, my lovely now husband, we have a sailboat in our backyard that he purchased for $300. So picture that beautiful image in your head. And we've gone sailing. It's been a lot of fun. But now we have an excuse to have it. If we ever flood in Newberrytown, we have a sailboat to get around.
I wonder how far you guys would get in that boat.
Little did I know he's actually a prepper, saving, thinking about the future. So I have to thank him for that.
That's fantastic.
So we have some shared memories. What's great about what Jim does with Retro York and what Dami does with preserving the history of Newberrytown is they create these online platforms for people to go and share. Hopefully you're online watching us from one of these platforms. It's just been a great community builder. People give social media a bad rep, but like, really, you guys are making it, like, helping build our community because of it.
I think it's how you use it, and I think it's what type of people use it. And these groups are for people who want to share their history and share memories from the community and have them preserved for a while. You know, it's a modern day yearbook or a modern day scrapbook for people.
Cool.
Yeah, I like it.
So Greg Halpin, who is a friend of ours, he's into the history community. He shared this quote. He said, "I can remember watching my dad and others in the boat using an oar to try to find the top of the trailer under the water as we watched from up on the railroad track." So this was a trailer that they had down in Clyde, close to the river, and you couldn't even see the top of it.
Nope. And I'm pretty sure the one that sat next to it floated at least 100 yards away. It just right off the blocks and floated away. So I think they were pretty happy that at least they could find theirs.
They could find it.
Even though it was underwater.
Can you imagine having an oar and trying to hit the top?
I wouldn't even know where to look at that point.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed that he got his bearings and could figure out where to look for it.
And then he said, "Oh, what a mess that was to clean up. Mud, and more mud and debris."
Yes.
Another friend of the program, Jerry Jones. I feel like we always find an excuse to insert Jerry Jones in our stories, the geologist of York County.
He's got things to say.
So he had this great story of a first date that occurred on the night of Agnes. So he said he grew up in New York and fought for months to get a date with a girl that lived across the alley. She finally agreed, and we went on a date the night Agnes hit. I think I would have called that off. I think I would have said,
talk about a bad first date.
I know. She said, "I finally agreed." Oh wait, we went to the Stony Brook Drive into the movie. I lived near the fairgrounds, so returning home, I got stopped by folks on Route 30 and George Street because of the flooding. I got on 83 and got off at Philadelphia Street. When I went across the Cadorus Creek, I noticed the stream was 2 feet from coming over the stone wall at Lafayette Plaza. I got to Madison Avenue and Carlisle Avenue and hit a lake of water flooding out of the car. When I handed off the car keys to Deb so she could steer while I pushed the car out of the road, she dropped the keys and disappeared in the rapid flowing water." Can you imagine, like, first date cars?
I want this to be a movie.
Car got up on the sidewalk anyway. Walking home the 2 blocks, Deb stopped on a dead bird in her bare feet at 2:30 a.m.
Poor Deb.
I walked to the door and then walked home, and my mother greeted me at the door asking, "Where have you been?"
So I grew up in an Italian family, and there's no way my parents would have even let me go out in the middle of a storm. And if I was in the middle of a hurricane or tropical storm and I wasn't home yet,
right? Can you imagine?
The police would have been out there looking for me, the fire department. Yeah, no way.
Yeah, midnight 30. I remember at York College, they have that stream that goes through the college, and there is the parking lot where I used to park my car. It was a 1994 Buick Century.
Ooh.
Yes, it had the maroon, like velvet seats.
Oh yeah, super fancy.
Yeah, it was
very fancy.
Something else. And I remember it was flooding, and they told me you should go out and move it. So I went out, and it was right at the brim at the base of the car, you know, like right where you step in. And I thankfully drove away, but looking back, I don't know if I should have driven. I mean, what did they say? 6 inches of water, your car can float away.
Don't drown, Jamie.
Darn it. I'm going to be so much more prepared now because of this presentation.
I'm going to have to get you in a commercial for the Weather Channel or something. Like, don't be like Jamie.
Don't be a Jamie. So then the aftermath. We took this picture from the Washington Post to show you just how catastrophic Tropical Storm Agnes was for our area specifically. Again, they always think the coast, that it's not going to happen to us, and it did. This did happen to us exactly 50 years ago last week. So the tolls were daunting. It tore through Pennsylvania, decimated phone lines. Just again, like, just picture in your head, right? You have a normal day, it's 1970s. Next morning, phone lines don't work.
Right.
Electricity isn't on. And then I love the third one, concealing the beloved landmarks of our community. So sculptures would have been covered up, street signs.
Whole cemeteries underwater. Yeah, just things that you drive by and you take for granted the scenes.
Yeah.
It's just water.
When I think about even like our house that we bought about a year ago, and the garden that we have, and my potted plants, my umbrella stand. I mean, I know it sounds minuscule, but like
Your
I work hard on that.
Your boat would float by.
There's the sailboat floating down the creek.
That's why I live on a hill, so you have to come to my
You'll
house.
be trudging to your house.
If it floods my house, I'm 600 feet above flood level.
Oh.
So if it gets to me, we're all gone.
That should be on your dating profile.
I know, I'm safe in the storm. Is it raining? Come to my house.
What a great first line, pickup line.
I'm gonna get so many offers after this episode.
Your house is on a hill.
I know.
So we're going to show you some pictures here of bridges that also collapsed under the pressure, dams that were overwhelmed, sections of road just straight up floated away.
Right.
And then the sheer force of the tidal waves ripped houses off their foundations.
It's wild to think about.
Yeah. So here's one of the pictures that we wanted to show you. This is of a man that is in Pelham, and that was his trailer where he lived with his wife and their 2 kids, and now they don't have a trailer anymore.
Devastating.
Here's another one to show you how powerful water can be of this tractor trailer. This was the West Philadelphia Bridge in Codorus, and that is water spurting up from the grates of the bridge. So there you can see just how high the water was. Here is Newberry Street. Again, people on boats going around trying to, I mean, think about people, like I'm thinking about my grandma who is not doing well physically right now. She's elderly. I mean, how could she get out of her house?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard because, you have to think of the people that have elderly relatives or a lot of children.
Right.
I mean, maybe one child wouldn't be that hard to evacuate, but if you have a whole family and then you add pets on top of it.
Yeah.
I mean, to have to pack all of that into a little boat, or if you don't have a boat, put them on your shoulders.
That's what Sandra's going to share. A great story
Right,
of her and her 4 kids trudging through the streets
She
of
really
New York.
went through it.
Yeah. This is Windsor Park, and show you how the cars were flooded. That one gets me.
I know.
The bridge.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. There you can. They said the sun helped because afterwards, after the waters receded, they took their stuff out and they dried it out. So that was a way to save some things. But I mean.
Yeah, and that's something people don't think about. What do you do with your stuff after a flood?
Yeah.
It's wet. You have to dry it out somehow. And this wasn't. They didn't have Serve Pro commercials back then saying we're gonna come over and dry out your house for you. Here
is a woman who was, again, in downtown. You can see there as well in the picture a lot of the remnants of the debris that was around her. And I zoomed up on her face because I just think about like her facial expression and what she was going through. I would say her face looks both concerned, but also she's got this like determination about her.
Right.
It's definitely this like, I'm pissed off, but I'm gonna fight through it. Like, I'm not happy about it, but I guess this is life, and I'm just gonna figure it out.
She's been through stuff, and it's not gonna break her.
Yeah. And this was a church. I thought that would resonate with you.
Yeah, that's so sad. Yeah, I mean, my church in York Haven, I'm starting to think if that would have flooded. It was pretty far in town, so I'm thinking, maybe just like basement damage, but still, I can imagine that the old Holy Infant Church in York Haven probably had a lot of damage. So,
and then finally, the governor's mansion in Harrisburg.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So Nixon, he was the president at the time. He flew over Harrisburg to see a lot of the damage. And again, we see public squares and shopping centers that are blanketed with this rushing water, streets that were converted to canals as lakes formed overnight, street lights and cars went to service, rescue helicopters that were flying, trying to save people. And then this surprised me, there were fires that broke out.
Oh yeah, electrical fires.
Yes, and you couldn't even reach them because you couldn't even get to it.
Right.
Because the house was surrounded by water.
Yeah, and again, like you said, that's something you didn't think about. So, you know, there's just so many things thrown at you at once. How do you cope with it all?
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Yep. So 1973.
So this is after the storm, and they decided that Agnes was so bad that they retired her name.
Poor Agnes.
There will never be another Agnes. Thank
Never
God.
I don't know if you heard Sandra in the background. She said, "Thank God."
Yeah. She's gone. We don't want her back.
This was the costliest hurricane in the history of the country.
Yes.
And now since then it's been surpassed by other hurricanes, and then Agnes was listed as the wettest tropical cyclone on record, and then as we said already, at least 4 people passed away from this.
Yeah, very unfortunate. But out of this did come some good. Communities rallied together, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about the Back to the City project. So the Northern Central Railway destroyed. York, again, just destroyed by floodwaters and everything. So then they had Newton Square. So Newton Square's boundaries are the north side of West Princess Street to the south side of West Market Street, the east side of South Penn Street, and South Newberry Street. So these are our boundaries that we're going to be talking about. And the Back to the City project encouraged people to renovate and take back their homes after the storm damage. So a lot of these people were lower income. They didn't have the funds to do it, so they were offering loans for these people to move back into the community, to try and, you know, get furniture back into their homes, fix the homes, fix the foundations.
And Dami and I do want to recognize that we know a lot of people that live through this have a lot of criticisms of the Back to the City project.
Gentrification,
but it didn't take into account also the true cost of the homes. So we're not over glorifying it. We are recognizing a positive, understanding that it is complex and has its issues as well.
Right. Yeah, it is a sticky situation with it, but you know, again, it does just highlight the fact that communities could come together and rally. Yeah, and it was neighbors helping neighbors.
Yep.
So it is something, you know, worth talking about
Exactly.
for this episode.
Yep. So our takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming back to number one, the devastation. That's something that you just can't overlook. The human toll and then the monetary toll. I mean, $30 million in 1972, right? That's crazy. And then better preparedness. What can we do as a community to come together? You know, should we clean out our storm drains more frequently, check our gutters, you know, watch the news more often?
Right.
Should weather stations invest in better equipment, you know, to predict these storms? And then community rebuilding with the Back to the City project in Newton Square. And then of course Sandra's going to be talking about that too. She talks about how her and her community got together and they helped each other, and they didn't just leave each other out there to fend for themselves. So a lot came out of it, and it was horrible, but some good things did come out of it as well.
I remember back with the storm that we had in the fall.
Yes.
Was that a tropical? I can't remember what that was. It was a hurricane that I think I definitely got downgraded by the time I got to York County, but it rained like crazy. And we actually had a virtual learning day.
Yes.
The school decided to keep us home, and we had water at perfectly newly renovated house, new drywall and everything, which is terrible. I hate drywall. It gets in everything because we did it ourselves. And the water hit the siding in a way that it trickled through. It came through our ceiling, and so I could see like the tape of drywall, and it's like all wet. And so the next day we had to get back out there and try to fix it. And my drywall's still not fixed. But me and my lovely newlywed husband and I will have to add that to the honey-do list to try to fix. Or we'll just wait until it's ready to sell, and then we'll
Well, I mean, you know, the next owner can fix it. But yeah, I mean, I remember that because the power went out, I think, at my house. My house is notorious for losing power. I'm trying to get a generator, a whole home generator. If you want to contribute to that, call me. But yeah, I mean, we always lose power, and it's because there's a lot of trees out where we live. So when this flood, you know, came through, there was trees down, and then remember all the bridges that got washed out, and then like some stretches of the road came up, and then just the trees blocking the bridges and everything. It was bad, and it was nothing compared to Agnes. So
well, and I remember we moved to Newberrytown, and I thought, oh, we're like a mile from 83. We're not that off the beaten path from civilization. But there's something about the area that's very Bermudian Triangle, like prone to electric issues.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So please go and watch more of our videos on YouTube. You can find us at Hometown History, Jamie and Dami's Yearbook Backstory. And stay tuned. In about 10-15 minutes, we're going to have Sandra Stockton on to share more about her story. There's a picture of her and her sister. And again, I loved how she said, Storm left behind mud, dead rats, old tires, and all kinds of trash.
Right.
Stories.
Yep. So our next episode we will be airing will be July 27th. We're at the New York Wire Works.
Yes.
And it is in person. So I think we're going to do more of a nooner.
Yep.
Yep.
Could be like a lunch and learn.
Yep. So now we would love to invite our plethora of guests to share any personal stories that you might have of Agnes. Oh, awesome. My lovely stepdad. Who I may have.
This wasn't planned at all.
So, at that time I was 3 1/2. And my father was a local biologist that studied fish. So he was the man that companies called whenever there was fish problems in the area. And Agnes came up at Burner Island so far that there was a fish farm right below the Burner Island power plant. And they were raising this fish called tilapia, which is a foreign fish. And during Agnes, the tilapia escaped from the fish farm and got into the river, which is an incredibly invasive fish because they raise their young in their mouth and they were very successful, and they would potentially wipe out a lot of our game fish in the rivers. So I remember riding with my father to Burner Island upstream, downstream, and the warm water effluent that was coming out of the power plant for months after Agnes to do surveys to make sure that the tilapia were successfully eradicated from the river. And the way they had to do it was that Burner Island power plant had to shut down for 4 days. Now the power plant produced an incredible amount of power to the local areas. It's a massive cost expense that went because of this. But there's a hot water effluent from the washdown towers which heat up this water on this little tributary beside the river there at Burner Island, and that water temperature was around 95 to 97 degrees all the time. And a lot of fish would be in there, and it was a great place to fish, and the tilapia need warm water to live until they adapt slowly. So they escaped into that warm water effluent and stayed there. So the only way to eradicate them was to shut that power plant down for 4 days to get that water temperature to lower down to normal river water temperature, which is in the 60s, 70s at the time, and luckily killed the tilapia out of the area. If enough time would have gone by, they would have eventually acclimated to the natural water temperature of the river, and we would have had a serious problem.
That's so interesting.
One other point I wanted to make is just to put a perspective on how much water 12 inches of rain is 1 cubic foot of water is 7.48 gallons.
Wow.
So if you have an acre of land, and that square footage equates to 325,000 gallons of water in your, so if you have an acre of land, you just got 325,000 gallons of water on your property. If you have 10 acres of property, it's 3.25 million gallons of water that day on your property coming down. Kind of puts it, you know, it's hard to imagine that a foot, cubic foot is 7.48 gallons.
Wow.
But it is.
Just to show you that even when the rain stops, it doesn't mean
gotta go
that
somewhere.
all that water is still running.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you know, I mean, you look across fields and fields and fields of farms and stuff that have hundreds and hundreds of acres. It's just mind-boggling how many billions of gallons of water that is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. Another story?
No,
Question.
Did Jerry get a second date?
He did get a second date, and it went so well that he even taught her how to drive, and she never dropped her car keys again.
Go Deb.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. So thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
So
thank you,
yeah, stay tuned
everybody.
for Sandra.